Hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Beatrix Neyman from Beatrix Designs. Here you will learn how to master Tunisian crochet and much more. If you don't want to miss anything, remember to subscribe and hit the bell, or you can visit my website at www.beatrixdesigns.co.za. Enjoy! Hope you enjoyed this video. If you found anything valuable, please share this with your crochet friends. Also, you can leave a comment if there's anything that you would like to see in the future. And remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching. Goodbye. We covered most of the basics of Tunisian crochet with lots of tips and tricks to master the skill in previous lessons. But there are so many different techniques in Tunisian crochet. And one of the techniques that I found very cool is the fact that you can actually work in the round in Tunisian crochet. For that, you will need a double-ended hook like these I have in front of me. Now here I have a 5 millimeter aluminium 15 centimeter long double-ended hook, and here is a acrylic double-ended hook in a length of about 30 centimeters, and this is an 8 millimeter. Now these are like your standard Tunisian crochet hooks. Instead of the stopper on the one end of your hook, you will have another hook instead of that stop. But another hook that you can use is your interchangeable Tunisian crochet hook, where instead of the stop on the end, you will replace it with another hook of the same size. Now that is also very important. Your hooks have to be the same size throughout on the shaft on both ends. You can use the hooks that you find where the one side has a smaller size than the other, but that is for crow hooking. If you have a hook like that and you want to use it to try out this technique, it is fine, but the tips here is very important, because the size that is bigger you'll have to use on your forward pass to collect the loops, and the size which is smaller you can use then on your return pass, where you create the chains during the return. Now the reason for that is, if you collect loops on the smaller size, during the return you will struggle to get the bigger size of that hook through those loops during the return pass. Here are a few items that I made by using a Tunisian double-ended hook and working in the round. Here is a beanie. You can make hats successfully working in the round, and this I made for my husband, of which I will share the pattern with you in my RAVELRY store. And here I have a flat square, which I will also share with you on a later stage in a lesson on how to work flat in the round with a double-ended hook. Then I have my lacy swan show that is one of my most favorite items that I wear, and I will have this pattern available in my RAVELRY shop as well. And today's lesson will help you with a start on this swan show. But for today we will just look at a very simple item, and that is a cowl, a tubular cowl that we will work in the round. Now during the lesson, I will not work the specific stitch amount for this pattern, but this will be available on my website as a free pattern, and then in my Ravelry store you will find a printable version of it with all the links to videos that will help you with the stitch, especially this doing this technique with this current video, and that we will find in Ravelry. So let's start. I'm going to use an 8mm hook, a 30 centimeter in length double-ended crochet hook. The reason that I will use the straight hook instead of the interchangeable is just it will be easier for me during the demonstration to show you on smaller scale how this technique is done. Now I will also use some double knit yarn, or this is like a worsted weight, not a medium, it's more of a worsted weight yarn that I'm using during this lesson. And I'm going to use 2 different colors. The reason for that as well is so that in the case of the sample, the cowl sample, you can easily see the 2 different colors will resemble, the one will be resembling the return pass, the other one will resemble the forward pass, which will just make it easier to distinguish between the 2 passes that we are using in Tunisian crochet and also in this technique. Now I will start off by making a slip knot. Now when I make a slip knot, you can go and watch my previous videos. I do have a Tunisian along that I presented earlier this year, 2019, the patchwork blanket. Now in there I give a lot of tips, especially in the first few videos, on how to start to color change. In my first lesson for working the foundation chain, there are a lot of tips that I gave you there on working your foundation chain as well. Now, making my slip knot, I will not pull it tight. I will leave this slip knot open. I will show you later what we will do when we come back to my open slip knot. Now we will also count this as our first chain. Now we will chain X amount of chains, but just for the lesson's purpose, I will do a specific amount of chains so that we can keep the count, because counting your stitches during this technique is quite important, especially when you start off on your foundation. Now, including my slip knot that I did not pull tight, I left it open. Go and watch my first lesson on the foundation chain to see how I do it and all the reasons around this technique. I will count it as my first chain. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 chains already. Now when you work a foundation chain and you want to join it to work a spiral, the next will be a tip that you can use even if you do conventional crochet. This is a very good tip to follow, especially when you are going to do a very long chain. It tends to twist, and especially when you have to join it again, you never know is it twisted or not, because if you join it and it's twisted, your cowl will not come out tubular, but it will come out twisted. And that is also where the technique in making the twisted scarf, it's got a few names, or sometimes it's just called a twisty. That is where that comes from as well, in using a technique in twisting your foundation chain. Now in this case we do not want it twisted. So if you made a few chains, you will take out your hook from the loop that was on that hook. And you will make sure that it's nice and flat. The V's, these common V's of your chain should face you so that you can see that it's nice, untwisted and flat. And you will take your hook, and from the end where you started, like your first chain, or in my case this will be the slip knot that I did not close, I will take my hook and I will insert it in that hook. Now I prefer, in working the Tunisian method, to insert it from my back instead of from the front, which you will normally do when you do conventional crochet. Now you insert it in the front, and you will just put the loop, original working loop, back onto the hook like this. Now for Tunisian method, I will put it from the back. Now this will generally twist your loop, but we will get back to that as we are working our last stitch on the foundation. We will untwist it here at the end. Now with the working loop back on the hook, you can continue making chains, and you will know that this chain that you make will not twist because of the end that's on the hook. It will keep it intact. It makes sense. So you can continue making X amount of chains until you are satisfied, or according to the chain amounts of your pattern. But in my case, let's see, I just made an X amount of chains. Let's count. Let's go for 25 stitches today. So I will count my stitches. The best will be to count the outside loops of your chains if you count chains. And remember, this is my first chain. The slip knot is my first chain. It's now on the hook, and I will count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I have too many stitches. I will insert, that was 25. That will still be a chain. So the next one I will insert my hook into from the front, and I will just unravel all the stitches, and that will be the working loop on my hook. So I will have altogether here 25 stitches. Now to make the join of your foundation chain, you will just pull that loop, working loop, through the slip knot or the first chain that you had on your hook. Can you see what is happening here? It is not twisted, it goes all the way, and even if I keep it where I did twist it for the Tunisian method sake, it is nice and straight. All right. Now in Tunisian, we work in the back bars of our foundation chains, and here I can refer you again back to the first lesson on the foundation chain on my YouTube channel. Here is my first back loop. There's the second, and I will start picking up loops from those back bars. It's also sometimes called a bump because it makes that bumpy texture on the back of your chain. And I will continue to pick up loops from that back bump. Now on your foundation chain, you'll have to make sure that you work the correct amount of chains according to your pattern or your desired amount of stitches that you wanted to start off with. So here you can see I picked up stitches. This is a forward pass. But now all of a sudden I can't continue to work here because my foundation chain is pulling tight, and it doesn't matter how far I want to go, there are some stitches that's going to be left unworked. And this is the reason why we have a hook with 2 hooks on the ends, a double-ended hook. Working the forward pass in the blue color, I will continue working the return pass in my pink color. And that I will do by joining with a slip knot on the opposite side, on the other end, on the other hook of this double-ended hook. Make a slip knot, and what I will do, I will slide these loops that I've picked up for my foundation row. I will slide it to that end where I just joined the different color. I work the different color. I explained to you to see the difference in working the return and the forward, but you can use the same color as well as I did in my lacy swan show pattern. This is the same color. So what I've done is you can either work with 2 different balls of yarn or skeins, or you can work the one end and the other end of the same ball, working the one end on the forward and then join for the return pass on the other end of the same ball. You have a choice, but I'm using 2 different colors here just so that it's more visual for you. And what I will do, this loop from my slip knot, I will just pull through my very first loop that I made on the forward pass. From there on, this is the only time that you will pull the loop through only one loop on the hook. From here on, you will just continue infinitively with yarning over, pulling through 2 loops. Now here it's also easy for you to see how your return pass, the front loop, create that chain, and then the loop that was collected on the forward pass is just dropped. And this is what Tunisian crochet is all about, interlocking loops with chain stitches during the return pass. And this I will do up to about 3 stitches from the last stitch that I've picked up on my forward. Now I will count how many stitches I worked here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's easy to count because of the 2 colors. You can identify it very easy. The vertical bars on the blue and the chains on the return in the pink. Now I've finished the return pass. Again, I will turn this hook so that I can come back to the other end. And what I will do, I will just glide my work back to this other end, because this end is for the forward pass working. The other end will be for the return pass. So I will slide this back and forth on this hook all the time, depending on if I'm working the forward pass or if I'm working a return pass. Now I will continue working my foundation row, the forward pass on this row, and I will continue picking up loops all the way. Now we counted that I've done 14 stitches on the return. So let's see how many of the blue on the forward, the loops that I've collected, is left. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 14 plus 10 is 24. I need another stitch. And that is where the slip knot that I made, that I worked into, will count as my next stitch or my last chain stitch that I've made. And I will pick up the loop. If you can see, it makes a little bump there from this yarn. It goes there into that loop created and interlocking with the next one. That is where I will insert my hook. And even though this yarn face my front, it's fine. But my yarn where I joined from the return pass, we can keep it towards the back. Let's keep it there at the back, because now I can also continue picking up loops on my first row. But here, just to help you, and it's important to actually do this when you are not used to working in the round, is to use stitch markers. Always use your stitch markers during working in the round. And I will insert a stitch marker in my very first vertical bar, my first stitch, so that I know that this is the first stitch of every round. Because what is happening here, I am working in a spiral all the way. When I picked up loops for a forward pass, it goes round and round and round. If I return on the return pass, working down the loops, it goes round and round and round. The only thing I am doing here is on the one end of the hook, I will work a forward pass, and then I will turn the hook around. Let's just get more yarn. Turn the work around so that I can get to the other side of the hook, glide my work to that end, because that is where the return pass will be worked. So this end is for working return pass, and the other end of the hook is to work the forward pass. So let's do a few return stitches now. We are returning up to, it's good to leave a few stitches on the hook. Don't return all the stitches, all the loops that you picked up. The reason for that is because there's a lot of movement while you are wiggling on your work, and it can open up those loops quite a lot, and it can become sloppy and difficult to identify if you're a beginner as you are working in the round like this. So now we can continue. This will be my first stitch. First row, I'm sorry. This was my foundation row, and this will now be the first row that I'm working. And you can see I'm working the Tunisian Simple Stitch, and we just continue working in the round. And I like to work as far as I can go before I struggle, before this piece gets too short and I struggle to get my stitches worked. So let's stop here. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches left here. It depends on the hooks that you're using. It depends on the pattern that you're making, the yarn weight that you're using, how many stitches you'll be able to work. The smaller this circle is, the more difficult it will be to work large pieces of stitches. And then we will continue here with return pass. Can you see I already went over to my first row on a return pass? So easily we can see on the back, this will be the back, there's a return, but that will be part of the forward. There's a return again where I am working the chains that interlock my loops from my forward. Turn around again. and you will just continue. I completed a few rounds so you can see what it will look like when it's worked in two different colors. There you can see in the pink the return pass chains between the V bars of the forward pass loops that gets picked up during the forward. And now I'm going to do a bind off, but before that I just want to discuss the color and the difference that the appearance gives to you in comparison to working Tunisian Simple Stitch in the rows. You can clearly see the chains. You can see the V's lie in the opposite direction of what it normally does when you work in the rows. That is how you can easily identify the top and the bottom, because if I turn this around, generally if you work in rows, your chains, if you are right-handed obviously, your chains will, the V's will direct into the right-hand direction. But working in the round, because you did the return from the opposite direction that you will normally do when you work in rows, it lies now towards the left. Now to work in color, it gives nice contrast, so it gives a very beautiful texture, and you can work it in different stitch types, working different stitch patterns. You can play around and experiment. There are a lot of ideas floating around that you can find and try. I will also share some more lessons in the future, but for now let's see how I do the bind off when I work in the round like this. Now first of all, I have still unworked stitches from the forward pass. Now before I complete my return pass, I will start my bind off, and all that I will do is just work slip stitches as I would have done when I just worked Tunisian Simple Stitch in rows. So I will just continue with slip stitches. There's the first one, and I will draw that loop through the previous loop on the hook as well, and I will continue doing bind off in slip stitches like this. Now you can do a few rows, and then let's just complete, not a few rows, I'm sorry, a few stitches, and let's just complete the return pass. Just complete those last stitches in return, and I will already cut off my pink yarn for the return pass, and I will just pull the tail through my last stitch, and then I will finish off my slip stitches for the bind off of this edge. And I will just quickly do that because I want to show you how to neatly bind off that last loop that gets left on the hook when you are done with these slip stitches. Here I am going to work the last stitch, making a slip stitch. I will cut my yarn and I will pull this tail through this last stitch that I created. And what I normally do, I'll just take a normal crochet hook and a much thinner one that I originally worked with, and I will do a bind off. This method is available, I'm sure, everywhere on YouTube and on tutorials, but if you're not familiar with it, I will just show it to you. What you will do with this tail, here you can see a clear V of this first slip stitch that was created. Now all I will do from the front, underneath my 2 loops, my back and front loop, I will insert my hook and I will grab onto the yarn tail and I will pull it through to the front like this. And then I'll insert my hook on that last chain stitch from the front underneath that front vertical bar, and I will grab onto this yarn tail, I will yarn it over and I will pull it through as well. And there you can see that the join goes it smooths into the next and the previous chain or slip stitch in this case, so it can create a nice clear invisible join on the top when you do the bind off. Now the part that we are actually anxious to have a look at is this bottom part where I used the slip knot as the chain. Now at this stage it does not look very neat and tidy as my bind off at the top looks, so I'll just take out my stitch marker. The stitch marker I just kept in my first stitch because I worked in 2 different colors and my yarn was a heavier weight yarn. I could clearly see from the first stitch where my first row starts all the way, but it's a tip that I can just, if we go back a bit, you can also adjust this stitch marker row by row, but after a while you will get used to finding that first row as you continue, and because it's a continuous spiral working the same stitch all the way through, it just makes it easy and simple. Now what I will do at this bottom here, you can see my first chain of that foundation chain that we went around, and here was that slip knot that I left open. Now what I would actually do is I will just unravel this slip knot. So I will take out this tail completely from my last, or from this last stitch that it was joined to. So what I will do with this tail, I will insert my hook from the top into that back loop. Now I'm working from the wrong side, so it will be a back loop as I face it, and I will just yarn over and bring that yarn tail to the top, and then the last stitch that it was joined to where I unravel it from, I'll insert my hook underneath both those loops and I will bring this yarn tail to the wrong side, and then again from the bottom. Let me just have this stitch nice and clear. Of course I hooked it. That was now not nice. Alright, so from the front into the front loop, I'll insert my hook again, and then I will take that yarn tail, yarn over, and just pull it through to the bottom. So the finish on the bottom edge will be actually done the same as at the top, and this gives you a nice clear transition on the whole chain on the foundation and also on the slip stitches at the top of your piece.
Hope you enjoyed this video. If you found anything valuable, please share this with your crochet friends. Also, you can leave a comment if there's anything that you would like to see in the future. And remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.